officially 8 o'clock. So we will begin at this point. And so welcome to our Bible study this evening. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for today, and we do thank you for your many blessings. And we ask, Lord, you be with us and help us in our Bible study, that it be profitable and beneficial. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, a few opening comments. Good evening, Stevie. And so we're going to be starting with Amos chapter 5 tonight, but I just want to say thank you for faithfully coming week after week. Those of you who have been here multiple times, I appreciate that. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, none of you at the moment, but hopefully there'll be some of you joining us on the archive, and it'll be your first time, and I appreciate you joining for our Bible study. This is the first time we've been on the Allegheny Apologist page. We are finally able to do the Bible study on the page for the Bible study. And so I appreciate Stephen Goodnow loaning me his page for the last several weeks, but it's good to be on our own page. And we are still open to improvement. If you have any comments, feel free. A number of you have over the weeks, and we've tried to make improvements. And if you do have any suggestions on how to improve the Bible study, I'm thinking especially technologically, but on the other hand, if you're talking about something about the Bible study itself, feel free to comment on that as well. The YouTube videos, the last 3 YouTube videos are uploading, so there will be 6 of them on the YouTube channel. So if somebody is not friendly with Facebook, but would be interested in watching the Bible studies on YouTube, you can pass that information on to them. Feel free to comment during the Bible study if there's anything you want to ask or comment on, corrections you want to make live. Please do so. And may not be able to answer right away, depending on your question or comment. It may happen next week or later in the Bible study, but I do appreciate any comments. And good evening, Albertsons. Anyway, where are we? Oh, yeah. And I appreciate you all commenting, since I can't see who you are, just how many there are of you. So I do appreciate you all commenting as you have been tonight. I do have to give my weekly disclaimer that neither my employer nor my church endorses this Bible study. This is my own activity, and so this does not reflect on either of those. So we are starting Amos chapter 5. This is the longest chapter of the book, about twice as long as the other chapters. I remember when I was pre-studying this and I hadn't realized how long it was, and it seemed like it took me forever to get through it. Now I realize why. It was the longest chapter. Probably will take us a couple of weeks to get through it. I kind of laid out a timeline, and it looks like we'll be finishing this up about mid-March, which brings me to my Survey Monkey survey. 6 people have filled that out so far, but I am asking for input about future topics. Of course, I will ultimately make that decision, since I'm the one who has to do it. But I am interested in what you all are interested in. If you go to Survey Monkey, you can choose from the topics that I have laid out as suggestions, and then you can add any suggestions that you might have in addition to those. So let's get into Amos chapter 5, and it starts with the words, "Hear ye this word, which I take up against you, even a lamentation, O house of Israel." This begins a funeral dirge or an elegy, not a eulogy, because a eulogy is positive. An elegy is a lament, and so you hear that in the verse, a lamentation. But this is similar to Jesus weeping over Jerusalem. God is weeping over Israel because he recognizes that Israel is about to be destroyed. Even though he is the one bringing judgment, he recognizes he is sorrowful over the loss of Israel. And so he's starting a mourning over the house of Israel. And he says, "The virgin of Israel is fallen. She shall no more rise. She is forsaken upon her land. There is none to raise her up." So now he's speaking in past tense about an event that is yet future. And I don't know if there's a name for this of some sort. It's prophetic. I'm not sure if there's actually a code name for it or not. But prophets will do this where they'll use past tense for a future event. And that's because it's already determined. It is what God is going to do. There is no changing it. It is as good as done. When God speaks and he says something will be done, it is done. And so he will use, a prophet will use the past tense, or God speaking through the prophet will use past tense to indicate the absolute certainty that such a thing is going to happen. Um, it is fallen. Israel is fallen. Now, he calls him the Virgin of Israel, and that's kind of, um, depending on the commentator and exactly how they express this, none of them think that it's referring to Israel's current condition. Israel is no virgin at this time. She is an adulteress. She has, since Hosea brought this out, and Israel is not being faithful to God. So she is not virgin in that sense. Some suggest it's because she's unconquered. She is not yet destroyed, so she's unconquered. It may simply refer to the fact that it's a beautiful city and be metaphorical. Cities are often referred to as females, and it may be that this is simply a commentary on the beauty of Samaria, on how what great of a city it is. Um, but at any rate, Israel, Samaria as the representative of Israel, is about to be fallen, and it will never rise again. It will be destroyed and will not come back. As you know, Judah went into captivity. Judah returned from captivity. Israel was taken by Assyria, spread throughout the Middle East. There were remnants, we know of in the New Testament, of a few people who were from various of the northern tribes, but the northern tribes never returned. They never were restored as a nation, and will not be until the end of time, or I should say the end of the age. And so Israel as a nation will fall and will not be restored. It is not going into captivity and coming back. It's being destroyed. Um, it is forsaken. And all of the commentators agree that the word forsaken here means dashed to pieces, like a piece of pottery being smashed to the ground and dashed to pieces. And I found it fascinating because every commentator said that. No translation translates it that way. Strong's concordance, when you look up the meaning of the word, doesn't give any indication that forsaken carries with it that idea of dashed to pieces. But all of the commentators agreed. So I don't know where they got it from. If you just leave it in the King James, as every other and as other translations translate it, she is being forsaken in her land. There will be no one to rescue her. There is no nation going to come to her rescue. Judah will not rescue her. God will not rescue her. She has no one to help her up. She's going to be thrown to the ground, left alone, forsaken, will not be picked up by anyone. No one's there to help her. For thus saith the Lord God, the city that went by 1,000 shall leave 100, that which went forth by 100 shall leave 10 to the house of Israel. Israel's going to be, and I called this inverse decimation, because decimation is when you go through and execute every 10th man. This one's going to be where you leave every 10th man alive and the other 9 die. 90% of the population is going to be wiped out. A city, and now exactly what the city had 1,000 of. Some suggest this is 1,000 soldiers going out to battle and only 100 come home, or it could be a city that used to have 1,000-man army now has 100-man army, um, or a city with a population of 1,000 is now 100. So they all of that's possible. Now all of that does sound like warfare. It sounds, and if it is an army going out and coming back inverse decimated, then that would definitely be warfare. If it's simply population, we've been emphasizing the earthquake. Amos chapter 1, verse 1, 2 years before the earthquake. We talked about that earthquake back in the introduction. That could simply imply that the earthquake was extremely fatal. Many, many people died in the earthquake. I'm not sure about that one. I think this one feels a little bit more like being destroyed by warfare, but we're not sure. It's not clear how. It just says God's going to do it. For thus saith the Lord speaking here through Amos, thus saith the Lord unto the house of Israel, seek ye me, and ye shall live. Some of the commentators said this is actually a double command. Seek me, live. It's a command. That is how they are going to live, is if they seek God. He's commanding them. He's encouraging them. He's admonishing them to seek him, because that is where their life is. They will live if and only if they seek him. This is a call to repentance. This is their chance to avoid judgment, is to seek God. They need to seek God. If they seek him, there is a chance that they can survive. There is a chance that they can live. And in fact, the next, it's later on, they say, perhaps God will respond. We'll see that in a few minutes. He says, seek me and ye shall live. Verse 5, but seek ye not Bethel, nor enter into Gilgal, nor pass not to Beersheba, for Gilgal shall surely go into captivity, and Bethel shall come to naught. Um, seek, but not that God. He says, seek ye me, seek not Bethel. Bethel represents um, the house of God, where there was the calves. One of the golden calves that was set up by Jeroboam the first was in Bethel. Um, Beersheba was an idol center in Judah, in southern Judah. So even going to back to Judah, but going to its idol place, he says, don't do that. Don't go to Gilgal. Nothing specific about Gilgal with idolatry, but that's the implication, certainly. Don't go to Bethel, Gilgal, Beersheba. Don't go to those cities. That's not where your safety is. That's not where your rescue is. Those idols are not going to save you. In fact, he says, Gilgal shall go into captivity. Now, this is a pun. Gilgal literally means the great rolling. And when he says it will be swept away into captivity, Jameson Fawcett Brown says that literally this is the place of rolling shall rolling be rolled away. So there's a lot of puns in God's prophecies. God does seem to enjoy wordplay. And so Gilgal, the place of rolling, will be rolled off into captivity. Bethel, which is the house of God. Bethel stands for the house of God. El is that word for God. Is going to become come to naught, which is Beth Haven, is the house of nothing. So the house of God will become the house of nothing. Bethel shall come to naught. So don't seek these places. They're not going to rescue you. They will be destroyed. These cities where your idols are, where you may go to worship your gods, they will be destroyed. They will come to naught. Instead, verse 6, seek the Lord and ye shall live. You hear that again. Seek the Lord and ye shall live. Lest he break out like fire in the house of Joseph and devour it, and there be none to quench it in Bethel. Again, seek God and live. That's your hope. Your hope is to return to God. Seek God, and you might have a chance to live. The other choice is God is going to come in fire, and he's going to break out in fire in the house of Joseph. The house of Joseph specifically refers to the tribes of Ephraim, half tribe of Manasseh, but the northern tribes are typically called the son of Joseph, Ephraim, because Ephraim was the leader of the 10 tribes, the 10 northern tribes. And so the son of Joseph here is simply a word picture for Israel, the northern tribes. And he says, fire will break out in Israel, and will devour Israel. Nothing in Bethel can quench it. In other words, the idols of Bethel, those gods of Bethel, will not be able to put out the fire that God will send on Israel. God's judgment is coming, and there is nothing that your idols will be able to do about it. So that's why, again, back to verse 5, don't go there. Don't go to those idols, to those places of idolatry. Break out is a very forceful word. Break out in fire, or break out like fire. I guess not literal fire there. It says break out like fire, although there may be literal fire as well. But a very forceful word. And then he goes back to part of this judgment. He's been saying this before. Ye who turn judgment to wormwood and leave off righteousness in the earth. Judgment or justice is considered to be a sweet thing, but they have turned it into wormwood. Wormwood is bitter. A lot of them said that refers to hemlock, which immediately made me think of Shakespeare, who drank the hemlock and died. But apparently this is a very bitter herb. And so he's saying you've turned justice into bitterness. Justice should be sweet. Justice is good. Justice is a characteristic of God. It is good, but they have turned it into bitterness. And we're going to pick up, as we already have actually, but we're going to continue to. They have turned justice into injustice. There is no justice in Israel. It's been corrupted. It's been defiled. And so they've turned justice into bitterness. That which should be good is now bitter. Leave off is considered to be a much more violent word than what it translates here in the King James. They suggest put down, put to rest, cast down to the ground, dethroned, trampled underfoot. Those are the phrases that your commentators and even translators will use for this idea. Righteousness has been destroyed. It's been thrown to the ground. It's been left off as in no longer exists. It's been removed from the earth. Um, so there is no righteousness anymore. Righteousness is gone. Judgment has been turned to bitterness. These people are doing this. Ye who have done this, what do you do? Seek him that maketh the seven stars and Orion. Let me just pause there. Seek your creator. Seek the God. Now, apparently, this is more inferred than literally in the original Hebrew, but the implication is certainly there. Seek him. Seek the God who makes the seven stars. Now, the seven stars are the seven sisters or the Pleiades. And actually, it turns out that there are many more than seven stars, but there are seven visible spots of light in the sky. It's actually a cluster of like 500 stars, something like that. But we can see about seven of them if your eyes are very good. You have to almost look at, I believe it's Taurus, and then on the corner of your eye, you can see the cluster of seven stars. God created them. Orion is, of course, the hunter, one of your brilliant wintertime constellations. Go outside tonight, or not tonight, at least not if your weather's like ours. Don't go out tonight. But go out on a clear night and look at the sky. And Orion's belt is very clear, and you can kind of see Orion around it. And so Orion and Pleiades are two of the constellations that God made. And it's interesting because these constellations are mentioned in Job twice. Once talking about God as the creator in Job 9:9, and it mentions again the seven and Orion. And then again, God himself mentions the fact that he's the one who controls Orion and the Pleiades, and Job cannot control them. So these constellations are mentioned always together, and I don't know why. I do not know the significance of them being always together, but they're always mentioned together, and they're in the context of God as creator. In every case, it has to do with God as the creator of the stars and the controller thereof. Now, the Orion to the Jews represented Nimrod, the mighty hunter, which I thought was interesting. And it is also interesting that a shepherd, Amos, God is speaking through Amos, but Amos's experience as a shepherd, he would know the stars. So this would be something very familiar to Amos that God's using as he speaks through Amos. So seek the God who makes the seven stars and Orion, that turns the shadow of death into morning and maketh the day dark with night. So he makes the darkness light, he makes the light darkness. Exactly the context of this is unclear. Whether this is the regular day-night cycle, and it's simply speaking that God is the one who brings morning after night and brings night after day. If it is the context of judgment, of God bringing darkness to those who are being judged, but light or mercy or relief to those who are judged in the darkness, or whether it's going back to creation as the creator of the light and the darkness. It seems like there's a disagreement about exactly what aspect of it, but it's very clear again that we're pointing to God as creator, the one who controls the day and night, or judgment and mercy, if that's the case. It makes more sense to be physical because Orion and the Pleiades are physical. And then the last one, he calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out upon the face of the earth. The Lord is his name. Now, this could be the Genesis flood. He calls the waters and pours them across the earth. And that could be a reference to his judgment through nature of the earth, which then would connect with light and darkness being judgment. On the other hand, it could just be the water cycle or even the creation of the waters. So it's not completely clear, the whole thing, except that it's clearly pointing to God's power in however, like what the specific examples are, we may not understand, but it's clear that he's talking about God as the one who is, as creator, has the power. He has the power to make the stars. He has the power to make darkness light and light darkness. He has the power to control the oceans. And his name is Jehovah. The Lord again is Jehovah, the I am. The God who revealed himself to Moses as the self-existent one. The I am. I exist. I am present. I am being, but I am personal being. And that powerful name, the name that the Jews didn't speak. The Lord is his name. And then he goes on to say, now this is still referring to that God, the one who strengthens the spoiled against the strong, so that the spoiled shall come against the fortress. I struggled with this verse. I was reading this verse in the King James, looking at the commentaries, trying to figure this out, and I was struggling with it. And then I looked in the Net Bible, which is my go-to second Bible, because it is filled with translator notes. So if I'm questioning how it's worded, it will tell me if there's another way of reading it that is like acceptable, that is practical, or what possibilities there are, what the debates are. It gives you all of that. And it did a little bit, but it helped a lot, because it says he flashes destruction down upon the strong, so that destruction overwhelms the fortified places. And then I checked a few others, and ESV, who makes destruction flash forth against the strong, so that destruction comes upon the fortress. NIV, with a blinding flash, he destroys the stronghold and brings the fortified city to ruin. Holman, he brings destruction on the strong, and it falls on the stronghold. In other words, the word spoiled there, I do not know why the King James used the word spoiled, unless it's an Old English thing, because everybody else agrees that it's destruction or desolation. And so and that goes with Strong's as well. So here God is saying what they're saying about God. God is the one who destroys the strong and destroys the stronghold. So both the strong, that person, those people that you are trusting in, that you believe are strong, God is the one who destroys them. That stronghold that you're going to defend yourself in, that you think is going to bring you protection, God is the one who will destroy that. The God who created the world will destroy you. That God's power is there. The God who makes the stars, the days, and the floods destroys the strong and the stronghold. And again, this could be in battle, indicating that the enemy armies, when they come in to attack Israel, will overcome both their armies and their fortresses. It could be earthquake, because again, the strongholds, that emphasis on buildings that's so strong in Amos, does tend to fit into the context of an earthquake destroying their strongholds. Um, Now, there was a period of time between the earthquake and the destruction from Assyria. We talked about that last week. I think it's like 15 years. But even so, if your strongholds are destroyed by earthquake, do you have time to rebuild those strongholds before the enemy army comes in? Are they as strong as they were before? Is God softening them up for the invasion? That's speculation on my part. Verse 10 now goes back to Israel. They, Israel, hate him that rebuketh in the gate, and they abhor him that speaketh uprightly. They don't like, now, in the gate is the public place. This is where public discourse takes place. I guess that would be Facebook and X today. Um, and they abhor him that rebuketh in the gate. And those are suggested maybe be the prophets. But it could just be, and he who speaketh uprightly. And remember Hebrew parallelism, there's a repetition very often. So he that rebuketh, he that speaketh uprightly. Israel does not like that. Sin never likes being corrected. And as the prophets, or even just the righteous of the cities, are speaking against the evil in the cities, they hate that. They abhor that. They are not appreciative of this message of judgment, of recognition of their sin, of pointing out to them, you are sinning. There's a lot of sin going on in Israel. They're very prosperous. Remember, we talked about this the first week. Jeroboam II was a very prosperous king, very powerful king. They'd expanded their borders. Politically, they were looking good. Economically, they're looking good. Spiritually, they're horrible. And even then, they look good because they've got a lot of worship going on. But it's underneath all of that is rot, injustice, cruelty, slavery, taking advantage of the poor, debauchery. You have the whole thing underneath all of that. And nobody wants to hear that. No culture appreciates those who stand up for what's right. And so that's what God says. They hate him that rebuketh in the gate. Forasmuch, therefore, as your treading is upon the poor, and ye take from him burdens of wheat, ye have built houses of hewn stone, yet ye shall not dwell in them. Ye have planted pleasant vineyards, but ye shall not drink wine of them. So They've stolen their bounty from the poor. They are treading on the poor. They are taking advantage of the poor. They're taking from him wheat. Now, whether that's tribute or that's bribes or that's illegal interest or something else, the commentators were very diverse on what these taking from him wheat is, but it's clear what the point is. They're stealing from the poor. Okay, whether they're doing it through taxation or simply threats, bribery in the context of courtroom, where they would take a bribe in order to let them go free or whatever. If they're charging them interest, which God said you were not to charge interest to another Israelite. Um, Precisely how they're absconding with the poor's money is not clear, but that's what the point is. And then what have they done with this? Well, they've built themselves hewn stone houses. These are very luxurious houses. The implication of hewn stone is very luxurious houses. They have built themselves luxurious houses out of what they have stolen from the poor. And God says, you will never have time to live in them. They will be destroyed. Once again, earthquake could be destroying their houses. The enemy armies could be coming in and destroying them before they're able to enjoy their homes. The vineyards you have planted, you will never get the profit from that. You may plant vineyards, but they will be destroyed. You will be destroyed before you get a chance to drink any of the grape juice from those vines. There would be a period of time between the planting and the grapes. Not a lot of time, but some time. Certainly, if you're building a hewn stone house, that's going to take time to build. Of course, once it's built, you can move in, but it's going to take some time. So there's a gap between the planning, the building, the planting, and the benefit. And God says you'll never get the benefit. Destruction is going to come because God says, "I know your manifold transgression and your mighty sins. I know what you're doing. They afflict the just. They take a bribe. They turn aside the poor in the gate from their right." So again, what is this transgression? What is their mighty sin? Well, they're afflicting the just. Justice is not happening because they are taking a bribe. And because they are taking a bribe, they turn aside the poor. And the idea would be the poor are coming and say, we are being oppressed. This person did such, and they're turning them away because they don't have a bribe. The rich have a bribe. And so the rich can bribe the judges, and then the judges turn away the poor. The poor are rejected. The poor are not getting justice. This is coming back over and over in the book of Amos, this injustice in the courts, the oppression of the poor. And it was brought out in this context about bribery. And they've specifically, the commentator, one of them at least that I was reading, specifically put it into the context of those who've committed murder. I know God condemned bribes in general. They pointed out in this verse in Numbers 35, 31 and following, moreover, ye shall take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer. The word satisfaction there is bribe, which is guilty of death, but he shall be surely put to death. If a man has committed murder and he deserves to die, do not take money in the place of his execution. You might say, oh, we'll just fine him a lot of money because he's rich. No, if he deserves to die, he dies. Verse 32 says that you don't take a bribe from the man who fled to the city so that he can leave the city before the high priest dies. In other words, this would be manslaughter, but the same principle, the man who commits manslaughter must remain in the city of refuge until the high priest dies. You don't let him go home because he's willing to pay you. You don't do that. Because even though he didn't kill deliberately, he did kill. And there is a consequence for that. He says, if you do those things, you pollute the land wherein ye are, for the blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, except by the blood of him that shed it. So God speaks very strongly in Numbers that if a person commits murder, there is absolutely no way of clearing the land of that blood. There's another word I want, and it's not coming to me. Of that blood, except the execution, or at least the punishment of the man who did it. Again, the bribes in verse 12 doesn't specifically say that it's about murder. The commentators made that connection, but God clearly does prohibit bribery in the Old Testament law. And of course, it's inconsistent with, it's completely inconsistent with God's justice. Okay, well that brings us up to brings us to 8:30 almost. I could start verse 13, but I don't think I will. So thank you all again for coming tonight and being with us. Next week we'll come back to Amos chapter 5. We should be able to finish it next week. So thanks again for coming and have a good evening.